The great space station Aurelia Spire floated like a silver crown in the middle of the stars. It was a place where many species came together: humans, Veyari, Cathar, and dozens more. The long corridors were always alive with movement, voices of different tones, and the faint hum of engines that never slept. Jaren, a young human engineer, walked through the station's busiest trade sector. His arms were full of heavy tools and spare machine parts. The bag on his shoulder cut into his skin, but he didn't complain. Humans were used to carrying burdens quietly. He had come to this station to find work, to escape the noise of Earth's endless wars and debts. Out here among strangers, he thought he could start fresh, but life was never that simple. The corridor was crowded that day. Veyari merchants with their silver eyes and flowing robes bargained loudly. Tall insectoid Cathar clattered on their thin legs. Humans shouted to one another, selling goods brought from far-off colonies. The smell was a mix of spices, fuel, and something metallic in the recycled air. Jaren kept his eyes forward, focused on his path. He didn't notice the figure moving against the flow of the crowd until it was too late. Someone stumbled directly in front of him. Jaren reacted before he thought. The bag on his shoulder swung forward, his tools rattling, and his hand shot out to catch the stranger. His fingers closed around an arm, slender, warm, and strangely smooth like glass warmed by the sun. The figure gasped sharply. The sound cut through the noise of the station like a blade. Jaren blinked, realizing who he had caught. It was a Veyari woman. Her eyes were silver, glowing faintly like pools of liquid metal. Her skin shimmered faintly under the lights, a pale blue sheen that seemed alive. She was beautiful in a way that unsettled him. Alien yet graceful, fragile yet unbreakable. Jaren quickly let go, stepping back. "Sorry, I didn't mean—" The Veyari woman didn't answer at first. She only stared at her arm, the spot where his hand had been, as though it burned. Then slowly she lifted her gaze to him. Her voice trembled, quiet but sharp. "You touched me." Jaren's stomach twisted. He didn't know why she sounded so horrified. He raised his hands as if to show he meant no harm. "It was an accident. You were about to fall." But her silver eyes narrowed, and there was something like fear in them. "Human, do you not know? Do you not understand what you have done?" The crowd around them seemed to pause. A few Veyari turned their heads, whispering softly in their own tongue. Jaren felt heat crawl up his neck. He had no idea what was happening, but the way people were staring made his chest tighten. The woman spoke again, her voice steadier now, though it carried weight like stone. "Our law is clear. If you touch a Veyari without permission, you must become their partner." Jaren blinked, stunned. For a moment he thought he had misheard. "What? No, wait, that doesn't make sense. I just grabbed your arm. I was trying to help." Her expression did not soften. "Intent does not matter. The law sees only the act. You touched me." Before Jaren could answer, two tall figures appeared. Veyari guards dressed in silver armor that gleamed under the corridor lights. Their faces were hidden behind smooth masks, but their voices were cold. "What happened here?" one asked. The woman lowered her head respectfully, though her voice did not shake. "This human touched me, without permission." Jaren's heart pounded. "I told you it was an accident." "I didn't mean anything by it." The guards turned to him. Their glowing eyes scanned him like he was an object, not a man. One of them said, "Human, you know the law of this station. Among the Veyari, touch is sacred. To lay hands without consent is to claim bond. You are now bound to her." Jaren's mouth went dry. His fingers twitched helplessly at his sides. "Bound? No, wait, you can't be serious." "I don't even know her name." The woman looked at him then, silver eyes shining with something between anger and sorrow. "My name is Liara, and whether you want it or not, human, the law has tied us together." The words echoed in Jaren's mind like a prison door slamming shut. He had come here to live free, to build machines, to start over, and now, because of a single reflex, because of one moment where he had tried to help, he was trapped in a bond he did not choose. Liara's gaze did not waver. The crowd slowly dispersed, whispers fading into the noise of the station. But for Jaren, the world had shifted forever. His accident had changed everything. Jaren followed the guards through the wide silver corridors of Aurelia Spire. His steps were heavy, his throat dry. He still couldn't believe what had just happened. One moment he had been helping a stranger. The next he was being treated like a criminal. Beside him walked Liara, the Vayari woman he had touched. Her long robes shimmered faintly as she moved, her steps slow but steady. She kept her head high, though her silver eyes looked troubled. She hadn't spoken a word to him since the guards appeared. Jaren wanted to shout. He wanted to demand answers, to explain himself. But the silence of the guards was suffocating, and the cold looks from other Vayari in the halls told him enough. This was serious. Finally, they reached a chamber deep inside the station. It was quiet and dim, with a round table at the center. The guards motioned for Jaren and Liara to sit. One of them removed his mask. His face was pale blue, older, his silver eyes dimmer than Liara's but sharper. He looked at Jaren with something between pity and judgment. "You are human," the elder guard said slowly, "and perhaps ignorant. But ignorance does not free you from our law." Jaren gritted his teeth. "I told you it was an accident. She was falling. I just grabbed her arm. Where I come from, that's normal." "It's helping." The elder guard's voice hardened. "Among the Vayari, touch is never just helping. It is sacred. It is a vow. To touch without asking is to claim, and when you claim, you must also accept the bond that comes." Jaren's stomach twisted. "So what are you saying? That I'm married to her now?" Liara's face tightened. Her voice was soft but firm. "Not marriage, human partnership. Our word is Nayari. It means two lives tied as one. Once made, it cannot be broken without great dishonor." Jaren turned to her, his voice rising. "But I didn't make any choice. How can a law force me into this?" Her silver eyes locked with his, sharp and pained. "Do you think I chose this either? I never asked to be touched. I never asked to be bound to a stranger." Her words cut him deeper than the guard's judgment. He opened his mouth but couldn't find a reply. The elder guard stood. "The bond is sealed by witness. You touched," she accepted. "The council will record this union. You will now share quarters, responsibilities, and rights under Vayari law. If you dishonor her, her clan may seek justice." Jaren's heart pounded. His life was slipping out of his hands like sand. "And if I refuse?" he asked quietly. The elder's eyes turned cold as ice. "Then you break her honor. Her people will demand your punishment, perhaps exile, perhaps worse." The silence that followed was heavy. Jaren's fist tightened on the table. He wanted to fight, to shout that it was unfair. But one look at Liara stopped him. She sat straight, proud, but her hands were trembling slightly in her lap. She was just as trapped as he was. Jaren swallowed hard. "Fine, if this is what it takes to survive. Then I'll accept." The elder nodded once, satisfied. "It is decided. You are now bound. May the stars guide your union." Later, they were released back into the station. The crowd had scattered, but Jaren still felt the weight of invisible eyes. Whispers followed them down the corridor. Finally, Liara broke the silence. Her voice was low, tired. "You do not understand the weight of this bond. Among my people, to be touched without permission is shameful. To refuse the bond is to be cast out. I would lose everything, my family, my clan, my honor. That is why I could not refuse." Jaren looked at her, guilt rising in his chest. I didn't know. On Earth, it doesn't mean that. We touch all the time. Handshakes, pats on the shoulder. It's nothing." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "To us, it is everything." They reached the quarters that had been assigned to them. One room, two beds, small but clean. Jaren stepped inside first, dropping his heavy tool bag on the floor with a loud thud. The sound echoed his frustration. He turned to her, his voice sharp. "So that's it? We're stuck together now because of some rule I didn't even know existed?" Liara closed the door behind her, her silver eyes glinting in the dim light. "Yes, that is it. You are my partner now, whether either of us wants it." Jaren rubbed his face with both hands. His dreams of freedom and fresh beginnings felt like they were crumbling. "This isn't fair," he muttered. For the first time, her expression softened slightly. "Fair? No, but life rarely is." Her words silenced him. She sat on her bed, back straight, as if holding her pride like a shield. He sat across the room, staring at the cold metal wall. Between them, silence stretched, thick, uncomfortable, unbreakable. But under that silence, something else began to grow. Not trust, not yet, not love. Just the heavy truth that their lives were no longer their own. They had been tied together by accident. By law, by fate neither of them had chosen. And whether they wanted it or not, they would have to walk this path side by side. The days that followed were awkward and tense. Jaren woke each morning in the small room they now shared. glancing at Liara's bed across the room, trying not to stare too long. She slept like a shadow, still and calm, her silver hair brushing the pillow, eyes closed as if the world outside did not exist. It felt strange, unnatural, sharing quarters with someone he barely knew, someone who saw his touch as sacred, who now considered him her partner by law. Jaren wanted to apologize, to explain, but every time he tried, the words caught in his throat. How could he explain a mistake that had led to a lifelong bond? Liara, for her part, remained distant. She moved gracefully, quietly, avoiding any unnecessary contact. She kept her belongings meticulously arranged, the small personal space she had carefully carved out in the room. Every time he came too close, her silver eyes would flash with warning, reminding him of the law that bound them, but also of the personal boundaries he had crossed. At first, even ordinary tasks became minefields. If Jaren reached for a tool near her, she flinched. If he laughed too loudly while fixing a machine, she would tense as if his very presence were dangerous. Jaren began to understand. The law was not just about touch, it was about respect, about awareness, about acknowledging her body and her space as sacred. One evening, after a long day of repairs on the station's power grid, Jaren sat cross-legged on the floor, exhausted. Liara was quietly arranging data crystals on a shelf near the window, the soft hum of the station machinery filling the silence. Liara, Jaren said slowly, unsure how to begin. "Do you hate me?" She paused, hand resting on a crystal, and finally turned to look at him. Her silver eyes were reflective, like moonlight on water, and he could see the tension in them, the conflict. "I do not hate you," she said carefully, "but I do not trust you." Yet Jaren exhaled, relieved that it was not worse. "I understand. I'd feel the same if someone touched me, if someone made me do something I didn't want." For a moment they sat in silence, the hum of the station between them. Then Liara's lips quirked just slightly in a ghost of a smile. It was the smallest thing, almost imperceptible, but Jaren noticed. "You are learning," she said softly. "That is something." It was a small victory. A bridge had begun to form between them. Not trust, not friendship, but understanding. Jaren realized that the bond the law had forced upon them did not have to be filled with anger and fear. Maybe, just maybe, it could become something more. The following days passed with cautious routines. Jaren learned to move carefully around Liara, to observe before acting, to ask before reaching. And slowly, Liara began to respond, not warmly yet, but without the tension that had marked their first days together. One evening, as they worked together to repair a malfunctioning module in the station's outer hull, Liara suddenly placed her hand on his arm, not forcefully, not threatening, but with a gentle, guiding touch. Jaren froze, heart thundering. "Careful with that panel," she said softly, her fingers steady against his skin. "It's live." It was the first touch that was hers to give. Not by law, not by accident. A small, deliberate choice. Jaren felt an unfamiliar warmth in his chest, a flutter of something he could not name. Afterward, they returned to their quarters in silence. Jaren sat on the floor, staring at the tools scattered around him, and realized he could not stop thinking about that single touch. It had changed something between them, even if it was tiny, even if it was only a hint of trust. Days turned into weeks. They shared meals in silence at first, but eventually Liara began to ask questions. Simple ones. "Where is your home world?" she asked one night, stirring a small bowl of nutrient paste. "Earth," Jaren replied, shrugging. "It's crowded, noisy, a lot of problems." Her eyes tilted curiously. "And yet you are alive." "You adapt." He smiled faintly, something he hadn't done since the accident. "I have to. Life doesn't wait." Liara studied him for a long moment. "You are different from other humans I have met," she said finally. "You think before you speak sometimes." Jaren chuckled, a sound rusty from disuse. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But mostly I just react." Her silver eyes softened, though she did not say so aloud. Jaren noticed, and it made his chest ache with a strange warmth. He had been forced into this bond by law, by accident. But slowly he was beginning to see Liara as more than just a stranger, more than just someone he was tied to unwillingly. One night, he woke to find her sitting on the edge of her bed, staring out at the stars beyond the observation window. He could see her reflection in the glass, silver hair glinting softly under the station lights. "Liara?" he whispered. She did not turn. "You sleep too heavily sometimes." "I can hear your heart." "It worries me." Jaren frowned. "You worry about me?" She finally looked at him, eyes shining faintly. I am learning to care. That is all I will say. It was the first time she admitted anything resembling affection, even cautiously. Jaren felt a lump form in his throat. He wanted to reach for her to tell her it was okay, but he stopped. Respect. Boundaries. He had learned that lesson well. Still, the small acknowledgement changed something. He felt lighter, less trapped, and strangely hopeful. Maybe this bond, forced by law, could grow into something real. Not imprisonment, not resentment, but companionship. By the end of the week, they had established small routines. Jaren made an effort to cook meals for both of them, even if he was terrible at it. Liara began to answer his questions, tell him about her childhood, her home planet. They still did not touch except when necessary for work, but the tension had begun to ease, and beneath it all, an unspoken understanding was growing. They were learning each other. Learning that the law had tied them together, yes, but choice, trust, and perhaps even affection could grow if they allowed it. For Jaren, it was both terrifying and exhilarating. For Liara, it was strange and uncomfortable, but not unpleasant. They were still strangers. They were still bound by law, but slowly, the first threads of connection were forming. Threads that could grow into something neither had expected. Something stronger than mere obligation. The bond had begun. Weeks passed, and the bond between Jaren and Liara had begun to take shape. But it was fragile, like a delicate crystal hanging by a thread. They moved together in the small quarters, shared meals, and repaired station equipment side by side. Yet a silent tension always lingered in the room. One evening, after a long shift repairing the station's outer docking port, Jaren slumped against the wall, sweat dripping from his brow. Liara moved silently around the room, organizing their equipment. The faint hum of the station was the only sound between them. Jaren broke the silence abruptly. Liara, can I ask you something? His voice sounded rough from exhaustion, but there was an edge of frustration in it. She glanced at him, silver eyes reflective and wary. You may, but choose your words carefully. He shook his head, running a hand through his messy hair. Do you even want this? Being tied to me? The law forced it. You didn't choose me, and I didn't choose you, so why are we pretending like it's normal? Liara stiffened. Her delicate hands tightened around a small data tablet she had been holding. For a moment she looked as though she might retreat into silence, but then she squared her shoulders. You speak as if it is simple, human, she said softly, her voice tinged with anger and pain. You think you understand, but you do not. Our law does not exist for punishment. It exists for protection, for respect, for honor. When you touched me without permission, you set in motion something far beyond your understanding. You do not know what that means for me. Jaren's chest tightened. I don't understand. I made a mistake. I helped you. And now somehow that makes us bonded? Liara's silver eyes flashed. It was not a mistake in our eyes. To you, perhaps, but to us human, to touch is sacred. Touch without consent is violation. And now, you are my partner. You are part of my life, whether you wish it or not. He clenched his fists. And what if I refuse? What if I walk away? You think I want this? I didn't come here for this. I came here to live freely, to work, to survive. The pain in Liara's expression deepened. Do you think I want this either? Do you think I am happy that I am bound to a stranger? To someone who does not understand me? If you leave, human, I will be dishonored. My family will reject me. My clan may demand punishment. I would be alone. Cast out, worthless. Do you understand that? Jaren froze. Her words hit him like a physical blow. For a moment, he didn't breathe. He had thought only of his own frustration, his own anger at the law, at the situation, but she had been trapped too. She had been facing a world that could destroy her simply because of him. I didn't know, he whispered, voice shaking. I didn't know it would be like that for you. Liara's voice softened slightly, though it was still firm. You did not know because humans do not see the weight of touch. To us, it is more than skin. It is trust, it is honor, it is binding our lives together. Your touch without permission, it changed everything. Jaren sank to the floor, staring at the metal tiles, guilt clawing at his chest. He had always thought of himself as careful, as someone who considered others. Yet in one reflex, one small act, he had caused chaos in another life. Chaos he could not fix. Silence fell over the room, thick and suffocating. Both of them sat there breathing in the recycled air, trying to process the storm that had just erupted between them. For a long moment, neither moved. Finally, Liara spoke again, softer this time. I do not wish to fight with you, but you must understand, our bond is not just a word. It is responsibility, and responsibility carries weight. Jaren nodded, though he could not meet her gaze. I want to understand. I really do. But I'm scared too. Scared that I'll make it worse, that I'll do something wrong and hurt you even more. Her eyes softened slightly, though they still glinted with silver steel. Fear is human, but you must learn quickly, human, if you are to survive this bond without causing further pain. Days passed after that argument in tense silence. Neither spoke much, and when they did, it was only necessary words for work or station maintenance. The air between them was tight, taut with unspoken tension. Yet slowly, something began to shift. Jaren made careful efforts to respect Liara's boundaries. He asked before reaching for shared equipment. He moved cautiously around her, noticing small details. The way she flinched when he came too close. The way she preferred the light dim in their quarters. Liara, too, began to adjust. She still carried the weight of their forced bond, but she began small gestures of trust. She allowed him to help with minor repairs on her personal equipment, guided him gently rather than withdrawing completely, and occasionally offered quiet conversation while they worked. One evening, after a long day of manual repairs in the docking bay, Liara paused and looked at him. Human, you are learning. Jaren wiped sweat from his brow, heart pounding not from exhaustion but from something else. I want to, he admitted. I don't want to make things worse. I want us to survive this bond. Somehow. Her eyes softened, a flicker of something like approval shining in their silver depths. Then we shall see, human. But do not forget, one mistake and the consequences are severe, not just for you, for me. The words stung, but Jaren nodded. He realized that this bond was more than law, more than obligation. It was trust. And trust, he knew, was harder to earn than freedom. Later that night, as they sat in the quiet of their shared room, Jaren caught a glimpse of Liara's vulnerability, her gaze distant, hands resting lightly on her knees, shoulders tense as though holding a weight no one could see. For the first time, he truly felt responsible for her well-being. This was no longer about survival alone. This was about care, understanding, and learning how to navigate a connection neither had chosen. But both had to endure. And deep in his chest, a quiet hope began to flicker, that perhaps in time, this bond forced by law could become something more, something mutual, something alive, something worth fighting for. But first, they had to survive the storm. And the storm, Jaren knew, was only beginning. After the storm of their first argument, the small quarters they shared felt quieter, heavier, and yet somehow safer. The tension between Jaren and Liara did not vanish overnight, but the silence became less suffocating, less bitter. They had survived the first test of their bond, and in the quiet moments something unexpected began to grow. Understanding. It began with small gestures. Jaren noticed the little things, how Liara always preferred the morning light over the dim glow of the station lamps, how she lined her tools with precise care, arranging them in exact order. She didn't speak of it much, but her movements told stories of discipline, pride, and tradition. One evening, Jaren found her sitting by the observation window, staring out at the stars. He approached slowly, careful not to startle her. The hum of the station was soft, distant, almost peaceful. Liara, he said quietly. May I sit? She didn't answer at first. Her silver eyes reflected the distant lights of passing ships, cool and distant. Finally, she nodded. Yes, if you wish. Jaren sat a few feet away, trying to find the right words. He wanted to say something meaningful, but he didn't know how. So he simply asked, What is it like? Where you come from? Liara tilted her head slightly, considering. Home is beautiful, yet unforgiving. My planet, Vayara, has seas that shine like liquid metal under twin suns. Mountains reach into clouds that burn with colors you cannot imagine. And yet, the people are strict, honorable, and unyielding. Every action is measured, every gesture carries meaning. Touch in particular. It is sacred. Jaren listened, captivated. Sacred? He asked softly. Yes, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Touch is a promise, a vow. It is not given freely, and when it is taken without permission, it changes the bond between two beings. Forever. Jaren swallowed hard. He remembered that first accidental touch, and a pang of guilt struck him deep in his chest. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't know. I never wanted to hurt you. Liara's gaze softened just slightly. I know, and yet, your hand changed the course of my life. Whether I wanted it or not, whether you wanted it or not, we are bound. He nodded, silence hanging between them like a fragile thread. Then cautiously he asked the question that had been on his mind for weeks. Do you hate me? Her eyes met his, silver and unyielding, yet not without warmth. No, hate is too simple a word. You are human. You act without understanding sometimes, and yet you strive to learn. That is admirable in a way. Jaren smiled faintly. I'm trying. I don't want this bond to be a curse for either of us. Liara's lips curved in the faintest of smiles. That is something. Perhaps the first step toward understanding. The following days marked a subtle shift in their routine. Where once their interactions had been cautious, tense, and deliberate, small gestures began to appear. Jaren learned to ask before reaching, to wait, to observe. Liara responded, guiding him through her customs, teaching him the significance of certain movements, words, and rituals that he would never have understood on his own. One afternoon, as they repaired a damaged power conduit in the station's lower deck, Liara gently placed her hand over his, guiding him to turn a delicate valve correctly. Jaren froze, feeling her warmth, the soft pressure of her fingers. His heart thumped in his chest. It is delicate, she murmured. If you are careless, it could spark. I understand, Jaren whispered, and yet he could not help but feel that this touch, deliberate and guided by her, was different. It was a choice. Not forced, not accidental, but given freely. Later, back in their quarters, Jaren found himself thinking about that small touch. It had been fleeting, yet it lingered in his mind, planting the seed of something he could not yet name. He realized that understanding, true understanding, came not from laws or obligations, but from effort, patience, and attention. Liara, too, seemed to soften. She began to speak more of her past, revealing fragments of her childhood, stories of her family, of the mountains and seas of Veyara, of lessons in honor and responsibility. She told him how her mother had taught her the meaning of touch, a gift to be given only when trust and love were present. I never imagined, Liara confessed one night, that I would be bound to a human by law, and yet you strive to learn. You strive to respect me, that is rare. Jaren looked at her, surprised by the faint warmth in her voice. I want to learn. I want to understand you, not just because of the law, but because I care, Liara. Her silver eyes met his, and for the first time there was no judgment there, only acknowledgement, quiet and steady. She did not respond immediately, but the room felt lighter, less tense. Over time, they began to share simple moments of connection, eating meals together without awkward silence, exchanging small smiles, laughing quietly at minor accidents while working in the station's engineering bay. Each moment, however small, strengthened the fragile bond between them. One evening, as they stood at the observation window watching a starship drift past the station, Jaren spoke softly, almost to himself. I used to think being forced into this bond was unfair, but now I see it differently. I see that the law only started the bond. We are making it real with our choices. Liara's hand hovered near his for a heartbeat. Then she withdrew it, letting the gesture linger in the air. Perhaps, but it is still fragile. We must continue to learn, to understand, to respect. That is the only way forward. Jaren nodded. I will. I promise. For the first time since the accident, the weight of the law did not feel entirely oppressive. The bond, once a source of tension and fear, was slowly transforming. Understanding had begun to replace anger. Patience had started to replace frustration. And in the quiet corners of their hearts, trust, small and tentative, was beginning to grow. They were no longer just two strangers bound by law. They were companions learning to navigate each other's worlds, discovering the depths of a connection that neither had chosen but both could shape. And as the stars glimmered beyond the observation window, Jaren felt for the first time a flicker of hope. Perhaps this bond, begun in accident and law, could become something more, something genuine, lasting, and real. The bond between Jaren and Liara had grown stronger with every passing day, but it was still fragile. like a crystal balanced on a knife's edge. They had begun to understand one another. Small gestures, careful words, moments of quiet connection, but neither could yet say that they had chosen each other freely. That evening, the station's observation deck was bathed in the soft light of a distant star. Ships drifted past, silent and glowing, and the vast expanse of space stretched endlessly before them. Jaren and Liara stood side by side, shoulders almost touching, yet neither reached for the other. "The Council has offered us release," Liara said finally, her voice barely audible over the hum of the station. Her silver eyes were serious, reflecting the distant stars. Jaren froze. "Release?" "Yes," she replied. "The bond is no longer required by law. We have endured the trial together. If you wish, we can dissolve it. You would be free. I would be free. No obligations remain." Jaren's mind raced. Freedom. That word had always meant safety, choice, the ability to live life on his own terms. And now it was right in front of him. He could walk away. Leave the station. Leave Liara. Start over. But as he looked at her, standing there, calm but resolute, he felt a strange tightness in his chest. Her silver eyes, once distant and wary, now held something softer, warmer, trust, perhaps even a flicker of something more. "Do you want that?" he asked quietly. Liara's lips pressed into a thin line. I do not know. I have never wanted this bond, and yet, over time you have changed how I see it. You have made an effort to understand me, to respect me. That counts for something." Jaren swallowed hard. He thought of the long nights they had spent in quiet conversation, of the repairs they had worked on side by side, of the moments of silent understanding. He remembered the first time she had touched his hand while guiding him, a small gesture, deliberate, full of trust. It had changed everything. He stepped closer, heart pounding. "Liara, I don't want release. Not anymore. I don't want to be free of this bond. I want to stay with you. Not because of the law, but because I choose you." Her eyes widened, a flicker of surprise and emotion crossing her face. For a long moment she said nothing, simply studying him as if weighing his words against a lifetime of caution and tradition. Finally, she took a slow, deliberate step toward him. "You choose me?" she whispered. Jaren nodded, his voice trembling slightly. "Yes, I choose you. And if you choose me, then we can make this bond real. Not forced, not law-bound, but ours." Liara's gaze softened completely now, the silver of her eyes warm and reflective. She reached out, her hand hovering near his, uncertain but willing. "Human. If I agree, it will be my choice. Not the law's, not accident. My choice." "I understand," Jaren said softly. "I would never want it any other way." Her fingers brushed against his, tentative at first, then firmer as trust and courage guided her. The touch was light, gentle, deliberate, entirely different from the first accidental moment that had bound them together. It was a choice. Jaren felt a warmth spread through his chest. "Then why will you?" he asked, heart racing. Liara's silver eyes met his fully, shining with emotion. "Yes, I choose you, Jaren. Not because I must. Not because the law says so. I choose you." In that moment, the weight of their bond transformed. What had begun as a forced, uncomfortable obligation became something living, something mutual, something stronger than either law or circumstance. They stood together, hands intertwined, hearts aligned, in a quiet universe that suddenly felt intimate and alive. For hours they sat side by side, silent, watching the ships drift past. Words were unnecessary. The touch, the presence, the simple act of being together was enough. Over the following days, life shifted subtly. They shared tasks and meals with new ease. Small smiles, quiet jokes, and moments of mutual care replaced the cautious tension of earlier days. Each gesture, each conversation strengthened their choice. They were no longer bound by accident. They were partners by will. One night, Liara spoke softly, resting her head against his shoulder. "I never thought I would choose a human," she admitted, her voice almost a whisper. "But I am glad I did. You have shown me patience, respect, kindness. That is rare among your kind." Jaren smiled, gently stroking her hair. "And I never thought I would be chosen by a Vayari," he said, "but I am grateful. More than I can say. You've taught me more about life, respect, and honor than I ever learned on my own." They stayed like that long into the night, hearts beating quietly in the shared space, no words needed, only the warmth of mutual understanding. The bond, once a burden, had become their choice. A connection born of law and accident, now strengthened by trust, effort, and the fragile, beautiful human capacity for care. And as they watched the distant stars together, Jaren realized something profound. Sometimes, what begins as a mistake, what begins as an accident or law, can grow into something real, something lasting, something worth every challenge endured. The choice had been made, not by law, not by accident, by them. They were partners, truly. The stars outside Aurelia Spire stretched endlessly, a vast sea of light and silence. But inside the small quarters, Jaren and Liara felt something more profound than the void of space around them. The bond they had once endured as obligation had transformed, piece by piece, into something entirely their own. For weeks, they had worked together, spoken together, learned each other's rhythms, fears, and joys. They had shared meals, laughter, and quiet moments where words were unnecessary. And now at last they were truly partners, by choice, by trust, by the fragile and precious human and Vayari capacity to care. That morning, Liara moved about their quarters with a gentle purpose, her silver eyes focused yet serene. Jaren watched her for a moment, noticing the subtle way her fingers lingered over the tools, the way her movements had become natural. Unguarded in his presence. "Morning," he said softly, offering a small smile. She turned, returning the smile faintly. "Morning, human," she replied. There was no tension, no guarded caution in her voice now, only the calm warmth of recognition, of mutual understanding. Jaren stepped closer, hesitating for only a moment before placing his hand near hers. Liara didn't flinch. Instead, she reached out, letting their fingers meet. The touch was deliberate, gentle, but filled with meaning. It was no longer the accidental touch that had started this journey. It was a choice, a promise, a silent acknowledgement of their trust and care. "I want you to know something," Jaren said, his voice steady but soft. "I never wanted this bond at first. I wanted freedom. I didn't understand, but now, I can't imagine my life without it. Without you." Liara's eyes shimmered in the soft light. "I felt the same," she admitted. "At first I feared the bond. I feared what it would mean for my honor, my family, my life, but through patience, through your effort, I have learned that choice can exist even in circumstance, that even law cannot dictate the heart." Jaren's chest tightened. He had never heard her speak with such quiet vulnerability. "Then, we truly are partners," he whispered. "Yes," she said, her hand squeezing his gently. "Not by law, not by accident, but by choice, by understanding, by care." A weight lifted from Jaren's shoulders, the heavy tension of the past weeks dissolving into something light, fragile, yet strong. He reached slowly, hesitantly, and took her other hand in his. She met him halfway, their fingers intertwining. In that moment, the bond was no longer something forced. It was alive, mutual, real. They moved together through the day with an ease neither had known before. Repairs were done side by side, tasks shared without awkwardness or tension. Small touches, hands brushing while passing tools, shoulders leaning lightly together for balance, felt natural and welcomed, not threatening. Laughter came easily now, and even disagreements were gentle, guided by respect rather than fear. That evening, the observation deck called to them. They stood side by side, looking out at the infinite sky. The station hummed quietly beneath them, alive and constant, but their minds were elsewhere, on the vast expanse of possibilities. "You know," Liara said softly, "I once thought I would never choose a human. I thought the law had forced me into this, and that was the end of it. But now," she paused, silver eyes reflecting the starlight, "I am grateful that circumstances brought us together. I am grateful for your patience, your care, for choosing me even when it was not required." Jaren turned to her, a small, genuine smile on his lips. "And I am grateful for you, for teaching me respect, understanding, trust, for letting me into your world." For a long moment, they simply stood there, hands entwined, hearts beating in quiet harmony. The station's lights shimmered, distant ships drifted by, and the universe stretched endlessly around them. Finally, Liara spoke, her voice almost a whisper. "Do you know what this bond really means now?" Jaren tilted his head, curious. "What?" "It means that we are not just surviving," she said. We are choosing to live together freely in our own way, and that is more precious than any law, any tradition, any circumstance. Jaren nodded, feeling a warmth rise in his chest. Then we'll face it together. Every challenge, every moment. Side by side. Her silver eyes softened, shimmering with quiet emotion. Yes, side by side. They stood in silence, letting the weight of those words settle between them. The bond had begun as a mistake, an accident, a law forced upon them. But it had grown through understanding, care, patience, and choice into something far stronger than either could have imagined. As the station hummed beneath them, Jaren felt a sense of peace he had never known. He reached for Liara's hand again, this time resting his forehead lightly against hers. She leaned into him, and for the first time there was no fear, no tension, only connection. They were partners bound by accident, guided by law, and strengthened by choice. Their bond was real, alive, precious. And as the stars stretched infinitely before them, they knew that whatever the future held, whatever challenges, dangers, or hardships awaited, they would face them together. Not because they had to, but because they had chosen to. In the quiet of the observation deck, hand in hand, hearts aligned, Jaren whispered softly, "Thank you for choosing me." Liara's lips curved into a genuine, warm smile. "And thank you for understanding me." The universe stretched on, vast and endless, but in that moment they were no longer small, no longer lost, no longer bound by fear. They were together, truly together. The bond that began with an accident had become the strongest thing in their lives, and that was worth more than anything.